Spring doesn't arrive gently in southern Manitoba. It hits like a freight train. Temperatures swing 40 degrees in 3 days, frost heaves crack provincial highways into gravel, and every low-lying field turns into a chocolate-thick soup that swallows equipment whole. April 2023. A natural gas pipeline expansion project outside Morden, Manitoba. 47 miles of 36-inch steel pipe scheduled to go in the ground before June. The contractor is 3 weeks behind. Weather's been brutal, equipment's been breaking, and now on a Tuesday morning that starts at -2 Celsius and climbs to +14 by noon, the ground decides it's had enough. A Caterpillar D11 dozer, 850 horsepower, 248,000 pounds of crawler weight, $2.3 million worth of iron, sinks axle deep into thawing clay while trying to grade a temporary access road. Not stuck, entombed. The tracks are spinning, the engine's screaming, and every time the operator tries to reverse out, the dozer settles another 2 inches deeper into what's no longer mud. It's quicksand with attitude. By 10 a.m., the site supervisor makes the call. Shut it down. Bring in recovery equipment. The recovery crew shows up an hour later with 2 Case IH quad-track 620s, 670 horsepower each, full track systems, 52,000 pounds of ballast weight between them. The plan is simple. Chain both quad-tracks together in tandem, hook to the D11's rear tow points, pull in low range with both tractors running full throttle. If 2 quad-tracks can't move it, nothing on site can. First attempt. The lead quad-track operator drops into gear, feeds throttle smooth and steady. The tracks bite, the chain goes tight, the D11 doesn't budge. He adds more throttle. The quad-track's track starts skating sideways. Mud sprays 15 feet. The dozer shifts maybe 6 inches. Then the quad-track bogs down, front end dipping as the tracks lose grip and dig their own graves. He backs off. Second attempt. Both quad-tracks this time. Same result. Except now both machines are sliding, losing traction, chewing ruts into ground that's turning softer by the minute as the afternoon sun bakes the surface and melts everything underneath. The site engineer steps in. We're done. This isn't working. We need a crane and a second dozer to winch it out from solid ground. That's minimum 2 days of downtime and probably 60 grand in equipment rental. The crew stands there, staring at $1.4 million worth of Case IH iron that just got embarrassed by mud. Nobody says it, but everyone's thinking it. If the quad tracks can't do it, what can? That's when the white Silverado pulls up. Farmer, local, mid-50s, Carhartt jacket, no expression. He gets out, walks past the entire crew without a word, and stands there looking at the D11 like he's diagnosing a sick cow. 30 seconds of silence. Then he turns to the site supervisor. You want that out today, or you want to wait 2 days for a crane? The supervisor doesn't even look up from his phone. We're waiting for the crane. The farmer doesn't move. I can have it out in 20 minutes. Now the supervisor looks up. With what? The farmer nods toward the road. Massey Ferguson 8S. It's at my shop, 4 miles from here. One of the quad-track operators laughs. Not mean, just reflexive. Because the idea that a farm tractor, even a big one, could pull out something that 2 620 quad-tracks just failed to move is, on paper, absurd. The engineer shakes his head. No offense, but if 2 quad-tracks couldn't get it, a tractor's not going to either. We need a crane with a 60-foot boom and probably a second dozer to anchor it. This is a recovery operation now, not a pull. The farmer looks at him. You paying for that crane? Company is. So it's not your money. Silence. The farmer turns to the supervisor. Give me 20 minutes. If I can't move it, you lose nothing. If I can, you're back on schedule today instead of Thursday. The supervisor looks at the engineer. The engineer shrugs. Let him try. Worst case, we get a YouTube video out of it. 18 minutes later, the Massey Ferguson 8S305 rolls onto the job site, and the entire mood shifts. Because this isn't some restored antique or a farm show display piece. This is a working machine. 18 feet long, 13,000 pounds, 305 horsepower from a 8.4-liter ATCO power engine, Dyna VT continuously variable transmission, full independent suspension on all 4 corners, dual rear tires 710/70R42s staggered and caked in dried mud from whatever field this thing was just working. No decals, no polish, no showroom shine, just function. The farmer backs it into position, kills the engine, and climbs down. He walks to his truck bed and pulls out two 30-foot logging chains, each link thick as a man's thumb, a 12-ton snatch block, a 4-foot steel pry bar, a come-along winch. He doesn't ask for help, doesn't explain the plan, just starts rigging. The crew watches. The quad-track operators stand off to the side, arms crossed, waiting for this to go sideways so they can say they told him so. The engineer's already on his phone, half watching, already planning the crane logistics. The farmer threads the first chain through the D11's rear tow eyes, doubles it back through the snatch block, and secures it to the Massey Ferguson's rear hitch with a clevis shackle rated for 35 tons. Then he does something nobody expected. He walks around to the side of the dozer, not the back, and starts prying mud away from the left track with the steel bar. Not all of it, just enough to break the suction seal between the track and the clay. He moves to the right side, does the same thing. Then he pulls a cordless impact wrench from the truck and loosens the tension on both dozer tracks. Not much, maybe half a turn on each adjuster, just enough to let them flex instead of fighting the ground. One of the crew guys mutters, "What's he doing?" The engineer watches closer now. He's reducing ground friction, loosening the tracks so they don't act like anchors. The farmer finishes, wipes his hands on his jeans, and climbs into the Massey Ferguson. He fires it up. That Agio inline 6 rumbles to life, deep, smooth, no drama. He drops the transmission into its lowest pulling range, activates the rear differential lock, and engages the four-wheel drive. Then he reaches down and flips one more switch, independent rear wheel braking, because the 8S isn't just going to pull. It's going to anchor itself by alternating brake pressure on the rear axle to prevent wheel spin and maximize track bite. The farmer leans out the window. Clear the chain. Everyone steps back. He eases into the throttle. No drama, no showboating, just steady, controlled power delivery through a transmission that's designed to modulate 305 horsepower across an infinitely variable range without ever breaking traction. The chain goes tight. The Massey Ferguson squats slightly on its rear suspension as the load transfers. The dozer doesn't move. The farmer adds throttle. RPMs climb. The ACO engine note deepens but stays smooth. No lugging, no stumbling. The rear duals start to dig, but they don't spin. The independent braking system pulses, left wheel, left, right, keeping the tractor locked into the ground while the Dyna VT transmission adjusts ratio in real time to keep the engine in its peak torque band. The dozer shifts. Not much, maybe an inch. Then two. The farmer holds steady throttle, doesn't back off, doesn't punch it, just maintains constant pull. The D11's left track breaks free first. You can hear the suction release, a deep, wet thwack as 50,000 pounds of steel separates from clay. Then the right track, and suddenly the dozer's moving. Slow, grinding, but moving. The Massey Ferguson pulls it 10 feet, 20, 30 feet, onto firmer ground where the tracks finally make contact with something solid. The farmer stops, shifts to neutral, and kills the throttle. Total time, 4 minutes, 16 seconds. He climbs down, unshackles the chains, coils them back into his truck bed, and wipes his hands on a rag. The entire crew is silent. The site supervisor walks over. "What do we owe you?" The farmer shakes his head. "Nothing. I was headed this way anyway." He gets in his truck and drives off. 11 million views. That's how many people watched the job site footage by the end of the week, because someone had their phone out. Someone always does. And what went viral wasn't just the pull. It was the contrast. Two brand new Case IH quad-track 620s, $800,000 worth of tracked iron. Couldn't do it. A farmer with a Massey Ferguson 8S and a chain did it in 4 minutes. The comments section turned into a battlefield. Case fanboys in shambles. 670 HP by 2 couldn't beat 305 HP with a brain. Weight doesn't matter if you can't put it to the ground. This is what happens when you understand physics instead of just buying the biggest machine. But the most liked comment, 47,000 thumbs up, came from a retired hydraulic engineer in Ontario. This wasn't about horsepower. It was about torque curve, traction management, and transmission design. The 8S has a CVT that keeps the engine in its peak torque band regardless of load. The quad tracks have power shift transmissions that hunt for gears under variable load. The 8S also has independent rear braking, which prevents wheel spin by alternating brake force. The quad tracks rely on track surface area, which is meaningless in liquid mud. The farmer understood soil mechanics. The recovery crew understood horsepower charts. Only one of those wins in clay. But here's what didn't go viral: the aftermath. Because what happened on that job site wasn't just a recovery operation. It was a brand loyalty execution. By the end of that week, the site supervisor called his equipment dealer and asked for a demo on the Massey Ferguson 8S series. One of the quad-track operators put his 2021 Case IH Steiger 580 up for sale on Tractor House. The pipeline contractor's equipment manager sent an email to ATCO's commercial sales division asking about fleet pricing on the 8S.305. Not because the Massey Ferguson was bigger, not because it was newer, but because it worked when everything else didn't. And in that moment, on camera, in front of a crew with a $2.3 million dozer on the line, perception shifted. The Massey Ferguson wasn't the underdog, it was the standard. 3 months later, June 2023, the same pipeline project, now back on schedule and finishing up its final mile. A different crew, different equipment, but same mud, same clay, same Manitoba stubbornness. A scraper, Caterpillar 637, bogs down in a low spot near a drainage culvert. Not as bad as the D11, but bad enough that it's high-centered and can't move under its own power. The site supervisor radios the equipment yard. "We need a pull. Send the Massey Ferguson. Not send a tractor, not send whatever's available. Send the Massey Ferguson." Because now there's a reputation attached. The farmer shows up 40 minutes later, same chains, same snatch block, same 4-minute procedure. Except this time, there's no crowd, no cameras, no viral moment. Just a farmer hooking up, pulling the scraper out, and going home. And that's the part nobody talks about, because the viral video made it look like a one-time miracle. But the truth is harder. The Massey Ferguson 8S didn't just pull a dozer out of the mud. It changed the entire job site's equipment philosophy. Let's break down why the 8S worked where the quad tracks didn't. Because this isn't magic, it's engineering. 1. Transmission design. The Case IH Quadtrack 620 uses a 16-speed power-shift transmission. It's a great system for field work, fast, responsive, efficient under steady loads. But in variable traction conditions, it hunts. The transmission tries to find the right gear, shifts up, loses traction, shifts down, regains traction, shifts up again, and in that constant hunting, you lose momentum. The Massey Ferguson 8S305 uses a Dyna VT continuously variable transmission. No gears, no hunting. The CVT adjusts ratio in real time, seamlessly, infinitely, to keep the engine locked in its peak torque band no matter what the load is doing. In mud, that means constant, uninterrupted pull. 2. Traction management. The quad tracks rely on surface area. More track on the ground equals more grip. That works in firm soil. In liquid clay, surface area becomes a liability. The tracks spread the weight, but they also create suction. The more track you have in contact with the mud, the harder it is to break free. The Massey Ferguson 8S uses 4-wheel independent suspension and rear-wheel braking. The suspension keeps weight distributed dynamically across all 4 corners. The braking system alternates pressure between the left and right rear wheels to prevent spin and maximize bite. It's not about surface area, it's about controlled load transfer. 3. Weight distribution. The Quadtrack 620 weighs 52,000 pounds with ballast. The Massey Ferguson 8S305 weighs 13,000 pounds base, maybe 18,000 with duals and front weights. In soft ground, less weight is an advantage. The 8S doesn't sink as deep, doesn't create as much suction, and doesn't have to fight its own mass to regain traction. Number 4. Operator knowledge. This is the part that doesn't show up in spec sheets. The farmer understood soil mechanics. He knew that the dozer wasn't stuck because of weight, it was stuck because of suction. So he broke the suction by prying mud away from the tracks and loosening the track tension to let them flex. Then he pulled from a mechanical advantage: low range, locked differential, modulated throttle. The quad-track operators tried to pull with brute force. The Massey Ferguson operator pulled with physics. By August, the story had spread beyond the pipeline job. A construction forum in Alberta picked it up. A farm equipment blog in Saskatchewan did a breakdown. A YouTube channel called Heavy Equipment Fails and Wins did a 12-minute deep dive with side-by-side comparison footage. And suddenly, the Massey Ferguson 8S, a tractor that most North American farmers had never even considered, was being talked about in the same conversations as Deere's 8R series and Case's Steiger line. Not as a competitor, as a solution. Because the 8S had done something those brands hadn't. It had proven itself under the worst possible conditions, in front of the toughest possible audience, with the highest possible stakes. And it didn't just survive, it dominated. Here's the part that pisses off the brand loyalists. In the weeks after the video went viral, AGCO's North American sales division saw a 34% increase in demo requests for the 8S series. Not inquiries. Demo requests. People who wanted to put their hands on the machine and see if it lived up to the hype. And most of those requests came from operations that had been running John Deere or Case IH exclusively for decades. One dealer in southern Saskatchewan reported 5 8S orders in 6 weeks, 4 of them from farmers who were trading in Deere 8R series tractors. Not because the 8R was bad, but because the 8S had done something the 8R hadn't. It had proven itself in public. And in farming, that matters more than any spec sheet. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Could a John Deere 8R have pulled that dozer out? Probably. Could a Case IH Steiger 580? Maybe. But here's the difference. They didn't. The Massey Ferguson did. And in that moment, captured on camera, shared 11 million times, debated in every farm forum from Manitoba to Montana, the 8S stopped being that AGCO tractor nobody talks about and became the tractor that pulled a D11 out when the quad tracks couldn't. Perception isn't fair. Perception doesn't care about hypotheticals. Perception is shaped by moments, and that moment belonged to Massey Ferguson. September 2023. The farmer, the one who pulled the dozer, shows up at the Morden Fall Farm Show. He's not there to show off. He's not there to sell anything. He's there because AGCO Canada invited him to stand next to the 8S 305 on display and answer questions. Not as a spokesman, just as a user. The crowd that gathers around that tractor isn't looking at paint and decals. They're looking at the duals, the hitch, the mud still caked in the wheel wells, and they're asking real questions. How's the CVT hold up under constant heavy pull? Does the independent suspension make a difference in soft ground? What's maintenance like compared to a Deere 8R? The farmer answers every one. No script, no marketing talk, just truth. The CVT's been flawless. I've got 1,400 hours on it, mostly heavy draft work, discing, ripping, pulling grain carts. Never hunted for a gear, never stumbled under load. The suspension matters more than I thought it would. Keeps the tractor level in uneven ground, which means all 4 tires stay loaded. You don't get that bouncing, skipping feeling you get with a rigid frame. Maintenance? It's a tractor. You change oil, check filters, grease what needs greasing. I haven't had a single warranty claim. It just works. By the end of the day, 17 people had asked the AGCO rep for demo schedules. 11 of them were Deere guys. Here's what the video didn't show. The farmer didn't pull that dozer for views. He didn't do it to embarrass Case IH. He did it because he was driving past, saw a crew standing around a stuck machine, and knew he could help. That's it. No agenda, no branding strategy, just a farmer with a tool and the knowledge to use it. But the outcome? That became bigger than the moment. Because in an industry dominated by John Deere green and Case IH red, a white and red Massey Ferguson just reminded everyone that horsepower doesn't win. Application does. October 2023. The pipeline project wraps. Final cost, $47 million, delivered 2 weeks ahead of schedule despite the spring weather disasters. The project manager sends a thank you case of beer to the farmer. The note inside reads, "You saved us $60,000 in 4 days. If you ever need a reference, call me." The farmer never cashed in on it. Didn't need to, because by November his phone was ringing off the hook. Contractors asking if he did recovery work. Dealers asking if he'd consider being a demo operator for AGCO events. Equipment rental companies asking if he'd consult on traction solutions for soft ground jobs. He said no to all of it. Because he's not a contractor. He's not a spokesman. He's a farmer. And the Massey Ferguson 8S isn't a recovery rig. It's a farm tractor. It just happens to be good enough to do both. December 2023. The year-end sales numbers come out. AGCO reports a 19% increase in 8S series sales across North America compared to 2022. The biggest growth, Manitoba and Saskatchewan, the markets where the video hit hardest. John Deere's 8R series sales stay flat. Case IH's Steiger line drops 7%. It's not a collapse, but it's a shift. And shifts start with moments. Here's the final truth. The engineers were right. On paper, it was impossible. A 13,000-pound tractor shouldn't be able to move a 248,000-pound dozer that two 52,000-pound tracked machines couldn't budge. But the engineers were working from assumptions. The farmer was working from experience. And experience knows that mud doesn't care about horsepower, it cares about traction, leverage, and timing. The Massey Ferguson 8S had all three. The Quadtracs had two, and in Manitoba clay, 2 out of 3 gets you stuck. Spring 2024, same region, same pipeline expansion, phase 2, different contractor, but same equipment manager. He shows up to the pre-job meeting with a revised equipment list: 3 dozers, 2 excavators, 4 water trucks, and 1 Massey Ferguson 8S305 leased directly from AGCO, delivered with chains, shackles, and a snatch block already in the toolbox. Not as a backup, as primary recovery, because the engineers learned. Sometimes impossible just means you're using the wrong machine.